Tonight's program title is Dedicated to Life. Our host is Mr. Frank Russo, State Director of AFA for New York.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. Tonight we have two truly inspiring guests. First is Mother Agnes Mary. Sister Agnes is in her 8th year as the first superior of the Sisters of Life, a community founded by Cardinal O'Connor, devoted to protecting and enhancing a sense of the sacredness of human life and combating the culture of death. Before entering the order at the age of 39, Mother Agnes taught developmental psychology at Columbia University Teachers College. Also joining us is Chris Slattery, who founded Expectant Mother Care back in 1985. Prior to that, Chris spent 13 years in the advertising business in New York City. Expectant Mother Care was the first citywide crisis pregnancy center. Since then, 5 more have been established by Chris. They counsel over 250 mothers a month, and they save about 800 babies per year. Chris also founded the Legal Center for Defense of Life. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Mother Agnes, Chris, this is our 197th show, and I enjoyed doing all of them, but I was looking forward to this one. Thanks for being on the show.
It's good to be here.
Why don't we start with you, Mother Agnes? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Sisters of Life? How were you founded, and really, how do you carry out your mission?
Sure, I'd be happy to. You know probably that we were founded in 1991. We were founded by John Cardinal O'Connor, who was then the Cardinal Archbishop of New York. Founded, as he said, after years of prayer and the realization that this culture of death, which was not then named that, but that this culture of death could only be cast out by prayer and fasting. He then felt that God was calling him to raise up a community of women who would be consecrated to the Lord, to pray for an end to abortion and to an end to all irreverence to human life. We started out with 8 in 1991 in Monroe, New York, at the Mother House of the Parish Visitors of Mary Immaculate, who were our first formators, the first ones who led us into religious life. We were a group of well-meaning, well-intentioned Catholic women who felt that God had called us into religious life. He started with 8, and we are now 40. We are 40 in all. We have 10 in formation, we have 23 who are in first vows, and 7 who are now in perpetual vows, which is a great joy.
And tell us about what you do on a daily basis.
Well, it depends on where you're missioned, but if you're missioned to our house in Manhattan, we provide there a home for women who are pregnant, a place where they may live. We think of it, in the words of our founder, as a holy respite, as a place where they may come to get their feet on the ground, to really relax and come to know what God is calling them to in this pregnancy. We look upon our work there. We provide them with shelter before birth and after the birth of their child. We look upon it as an opportunity for evangelization, to really bring these women to know Jesus.
These women obviously were inclined to have an abortion, or?
Many.
Yeah.
Not all.
Right.
But many.
Okay.
Yes.
It's funny, you see the bumper sticker that says, prayer changes things.
Yes.
Obviously, the Sisters of Life look at that as a much more than just a cute little saying. I saw in your recent article in Newsday, you said, our prayer life is our first priority.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Prayer changes everything. Anything we desire changed in this world is possible with God. I'll give you a little story, just a little story. We were praying through the intercession. We pray daily for our guests, and through the intercession of His Eminence after his death, and for a particular mother whose child, Caroline, will be baptized this afternoon. And we were praying that God would situate her in her first apartment with her child. And it's not easy to come by in Manhattan. It's a great labor. Her child was born on the 3rd of May, the day that His Eminence went home to God. And when she had applications in for housing, and when she went to look at the apartment that she received and is subsidized in some way, she found her apartment and found that the number of her apartment was 503, May 3rd, if you look at it differently. And I think it was his way of saying, I'm still helping. You know, he would have been very interested in the practicalities of, does she have a place to live? And that's what we help them with. And indeed, we find that prayer changes all things every day in our lives.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Chris, let me ask you about Expectant Mother Care. Can you tell us something about its mission?
Well, we are endeavoring to be the largest and most effective pro-life outreach in New York City, which is clearly the abortion capital of the world. In this country, we have about 1 out of 10 abortions are in the New York City metro. We have a phenomenal number of babies that are lost, and many of them could be saved if we cared enough to reach them in that vulnerable stage. Now, this year, we will be reaching 3,000 of these girls and women in crisis, and we hope in the next 10 years to maybe get to the point where we're reaching 10,000 girls and women per year.
How do you reach them?
We use Yellow Page advertising. In fact, we've embarked this year in a joint full-page Yellow Page campaign in the 5 boroughs at a cost of over $350,000 a year. We're testing in-cinema theater advertising. We're doing Spanish language newspaper advertising, in public high school newspaper advertising. We're going to be looking at radio. We have to spend the money to compete with the abortion clinics to reach women who are looking for pregnancy tests, sonograms, medical services. The big news is that we are not only doing counseling now, we are expanding into medical care. We have, at the moment, 1 medical clinic in our downtown Brooklyn office, but we, within 3 months, will have medical services inside or right next to our crisis centers in 6 locations in the city of New York, strategic places in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. We hope to expand to Queens next year. This is key to providing professional services, social work, follow-up. But the key ingredient to helping these girls and women is compassionate, caring counselors who understand and listen to the crises that these girls and women are in. They have real problems. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of sacrifice a girl or woman in an unplanned, unexpected pregnancy has to make to keep that child or to choose adoption. So we have to be there and be their friends.
How many of the 800 babies that you saved, how many of them are actually adopted? Are any put up for adoption?
It's sad to say very
few
less
are.
than 1% of the mothers will choose adoption because it's a double sacrifice for them. They've got to go through the pregnancy, and then they have to lose the baby in a way.
The problem is not getting people who are willing to adopt, it's getting these young moms.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a big sacrifice. The culture is very much anti-adoption. The media always portrays adoption in a negative light, even though the research shows that it's a very good experience.
For a very poor young mom, that's the real sacrifice, that to give up the baby.
Well, mother can testify. She's there with the mothers who have to make that choice between single motherhood and adoption. You know how tough it is for them.
It's a very difficult choice.
Have you ever gotten anyone
to
put up for adoption?
Yes. Oh, surely. Oh, surely. Our first 2 mothers placed their children for adoption. And it is indeed a possibility. It is the most heroically loving thing I have ever witnessed. I can tell you that. And the sacrifice is real. What Chris speaks of is absolutely real. But it is a possibility in the minds of these women. They need careful counsel, they need support, and they need to make that decision truly freely. Because I always say to them, the question they must answer for themselves so that they can live with this a lifetime is, what is the most loving thing I can do for my child? And if they know the answer to that question, they will be at peace. And if that is to place the child in a family, that's a wonderful and the most loving thing that some can do. And if it is to raise the child themselves, they will come by way of prayer to know that.
Because, sister, I can tell you, there are so many couples we know looking to adopt, young couples looking to adopt. We had one young girl stay with us for 4 months with my wife and myself. my wife really took care of her, was with her for 20 hours in delivery at North Shore University Hospital, and she put her baby up and did give her up for adoption, and it was heartrending to see
Yes.
her on that last day when she turned the baby over
Yes.
to, I guess it was the lawyers for the adopting
Yes.
couple.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable. Mother,
Yes.
tell us how you attract vocations for your order. I changed subjects
Well-
on you. Do you want to comment on the adoptions?
Yeah,
Comment on that.
other than to agree with you that it is so much
So-
more positive. And I was thinking as you were saying that a mother never gives up her child.
He's always
She places her child. I would
Right.
say that differently, because it is impossible for a mother to relinquish from her heart her child. She will place that child so that that child may have what she cannot give, which may be a sacramental marriage within which to raise the child, or whatever the temporal goods are that she cannot, she knows she cannot provide. But
Practically speaking, just following up on that, I would imagine many of the women that come to you may not be Catholic, they may not be,
That's right.
quote, pro-life, but for
That's
whatever
right.
reason they find themselves
That's
at
right.
your doorstep.
That's right.
Do you find much resistance initially from women, that they don't want to hear the God thing, or how do you find it?
There will be resistance at times, but it is a resistance that is eager to be broken down. And even we had a wonderful mother who would, pregnancy is not an easy thing, and pregnancy that is unwanted is yet a more difficult thing, the swings and moods and all of that. But she would find us walking by her room, and she would yell out from her room, "Sister," and the sister would come in and she'd say, "Tell me a God story." What she meant by that was, tell me how God worked in someone else's life, tangibly, so that I can have greater reason to believe that He will also help me. It is powerful.
Mother, suppose there are, you have no age limits on entering your order?
On
or are
entering our order, no.
No age
I
limit.
should answer your question. I'm sorry.
We know you weren't talking, just
But how do we get?
Yeah,
We
and
don't solicit.
Suppose women who might be
Yes.
interested, who are watching this program,
Yes.
could they just call you up, and what would
Absolutely.
they do, and how would they?
Give us a call. Tell us they're thinking or interested, and we will get them to the right sister and invite them to come visit, to correspond with them by mail, talk with them on the phone.
Very
It's
good.
a journey, it's a process, which we participate in.
Believe it or not, we're at the midpoint of our program already. I'd like to tell our viewers you're watching the American Family Association Presents. We'd just like to ask you to stay with us for an important announcement, and we'll be back in a moment.
Can we hear the ad? Don't worry about it.
There's the show.
That's all over. That wasn't too bad now, was it?
Powerful.
Yeah,
You don't have to say anything.
that's a good one.
We're back. We're talking about two really inspirational people. The title of the program today is Dedicated to Life. We have Mother Agnes from Sisters of Life, and we've got Chris Slattery from Expectant Mother Care. Frank?
Actually, to both of you, well, you just saw that public service announcement. Any comments on that?
Powerful and true.
Yeah, we're really thinking about the numbers in this state where this program is broadcast. 150,000 lost futures per year. We've had many, many millions of children, well over 5 million children lost through abortion in this state since 1970. And it's so sad. So many great Americans lost who could have been our great leaders. It's only through prayer and action that it will be stopped. And I think that the combination of us today is, with the sisters' emphasis on prayer and service and our emphasis on service to mothers, we see two great solutions working together to save lives and souls. And that's the way we're going to stop it.
What I'd like to do is, we've got a short clip from Cardinal O'Connor's funeral mass, if we're ready to air that. I'd just like to show you. It's about a 2-minute clip, and then I'd like to ask for your comments on it.
Sure.
Can we run the clip from Cardinal O'Connor's funeral mass, please?
What a great legacy he has left us in his constant reminder that the Church must always be unambiguously pro-life. I see he hasn't left the pulpit.
Yeah, that's quite a clip. Mother Agnes, did you have any reaction to that? Have you seen
Oh,
it?
indeed. Oh, we were there, you know.
You were there.
Of course. And we had prayed. You know, we always thought the cardinal was our cardinal. We didn't know it was the world's cardinal. And when we heard who was coming to the funeral, we said, oh my word, if he were there, he would speak to them and he would tell them the truth. And we prayed that somehow the truth would be told. And when this happened, it was like a moment of grace. And we knew he was alive.
Because it was spontaneous. That
Totally.
was not planned.
Totally.
I mean, Cardinal Law
Oh, obviously
did not expect that.
No, it was not
He was almost
rhetorical.
embarrassed by it.
No, but it told the truth in the most beautiful way, from the people through the bishops to our leaders.
Yeah, I was there too, and I
Yeah.
had
You were-
my eyes were filled with tears. Because I was in the back, I could see the wave of people
Yes.
rise
Yes.
in a thunderous ovation. I mean, the cardinal was
To life.
was
Yes.
speaking there through the moment. And
Now, did you notice that Bill Clinton said something to Hillary Clinton?
yeah,
We're
it was
dying
an
to-
awkward moment for the Clintons, Giuliani,
Gore,
Schumer,
Pataki.
Gore,
Pataki.
Pataki, all these politicians who were against the culture of life and their position on abortion.
Yeah.
Mother, I wanted to ask you, with the impetus of the Sisters of Life coming from Cardinal O'Connor, he sought a community of women committed to the cause of life.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I hear oftentimes, and I'm sure, Chris, you must hear as a man who is pro-life, a lot of times we're told that we're irrelevant. Don't tell women what to do. You women must have a very different perspective. And what does the pro-choice community say to you?
Well, they, in the very early days, they were very nervous about us because they thought we would be stormtroopers, I guess, political stormtroopers. They didn't understand the church or the role of prayer. And when they heard that our first work was prayer, we quickly were erased from their list of worries. And but that was when they should have started work. And but at any rate, they I think it does. It brings a very different dimension.
Have you ever met with any of these pro-abortion people or groups one-on-one?
One-on-one, but
Yeah.
not as groups.
I see.
But not as groups, yes. And we meet them very often in the women themselves in need, who are, by their own definition, pro-choice. But once you come to know them and once they come to know the truth, that is not so. I think it adds a great deal, to be honest with you, because we can speak. We often go to churches and speak. And it's a help, I think, to introduce the topic by way of women, because unfortunately, abortion has been seen as an issue of women's rights. It has nothing whatsoever to do with women's rights.
Mm-hmm.
It has everything to do with justice and the dignity and the sanctity of the human person.
In speaking with you briefly before the show started, there's no doubt in my mind that it's not a joke when you say they should have started worrying when we were praying. What do you see as the fruits of your prayer? Like, do you obviously believe that it's prayer is changing this?
Yes, yes. Well, we see the fruits of our prayers every day in the lives of individuals whom God sends to us, the people he gives us to serve, as Chris would too, I'm sure. We see it every day as we hear those who are entering politics, who are entering because they believe the truth about life. We believe it when we see millions of youth gather in Rome. Mm-hmm. They are the next generation, and they believe in the dignity of life.
Are you optimistic
Yes.
about the, we're in the culture of death. The media is against the culture of life, like you said.
Well, I'm absolutely optimistic. One of the reasons is I see new programs developing when people with substance are beginning to put resources behind the service movement. We're seeing this advent of this huge new ad campaign to promote life. We're seeing a new initiative coming soon in a major way to promote post-abortion healing through a Project Rachel project. And we're finding more, I think, politicians getting involved from the pro-life cause to try and get involved in politics. We're seeing more youth activities in the pro-life movement. We see the spread of the Sisters of Life. I'm very encouraged and optimistic.
Mother, have you gotten any indications of support from new Archbishop Egan?
Of course. I mean, he is very pleased to know that we are there. He is our bishop. We were never supported by the Archdiocese of New York
So you are supported just by
monetarily.
funds?
We have
private
always
funds?
been supported by those who believe in
I
our
see.
lives and in our works,
I see.
and continue to be so.
I see. So
Continue
it's
to be
private
so.
contributions to the Sisters of
Absolutely,
Life. And
absolutely.
you also, Chris?
Yes, to expectant
Yes.
mother care. And we need, from all over the state, we need counselors to come in, whether they'll be paid or volunteer,
Here,
to commute to New York City to help us from
Let me
wherever
ask you
you're seeing this
both
program.
a question. One other question, and we have about 3 minutes left. The issue of abortion sometimes is compared to the Holocaust that occurred in Nazi Germany. Some people get upset at that. I think it's a very legitimate comparison. When I think of the issue raised about how the German people could have tolerated it and what is the level of guilt of the German people, I'm torn because if I lived in Nazi Germany, I would have been terrified of the Gestapo. I wouldn't have been free, and I would have, and I don't know how my culpability would have been judged. But in this country, everyone is really, we determine what our policies are by who we elect into office and who appoint the judges. How do you view the importance of the vote on the pro-life issue, Mother Agnes?
It's cannot be given too great an importance. The civil responsibility to vote and to make known our intent and our belief and our understanding of the dignity of human life could not be overestimated. Everyone should be out to vote. It's terribly important. It reminds me of when I visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington. At the very end of the museum was, to me, the most touching and startling thing, which was in those Danish in Denmark, in those villages where the people collaborated and gathered together to save the Jewish people, they were able to save 90% of the Jewish population. And that is true in our day and in this Holocaust. We can save the lives of these mothers, their souls, and the lives of children if we join hands. We are powerful in our love.
Very good. And Chris, did you have any comment on the...
Absolutely. Everyone has got to vote pro-life. We're not going to ever change the culture of death exclusively through politics. We're going to change it by changing the culture, and the culture is changed in the family, in the schools, in the classrooms, and through community organizations, through the churches.
And do you think there's such a thing as a national, to the extent we elect pro-life people, I mean pro-abortion people, to the extent that we do that, aren't we not guilty as a nation of a deep moral
Sure, I think we're
voluntarily choosing
as
these
a
people to
populace,
lead us.
right? We're putting our commitments behind anti-life candidates, and we are responsible as a nation for the failure to
I mean, would you say it's the only
life.
issue? I mean, I wouldn't say it's the only issue.
I think it's
but
the
sort of a disqualifying
priority issue on which we need to vote.
Sister, just at a time when vocations are down, apparently that's not the case with the Sisters of Life.
No.
What are you finding there? Have you tapped into something?
I can't explain it, only God could. His Eminence would say God raises up communities to meet the needs of the time. I believe that is true. And I believe God is sending us beautiful young women to serve his people. And
I wish we had more time.
We're down to the last 30 seconds.
okay.
I'd like to thank both of you. We're going to put up your addresses for anyone who wants to contact the Sisters of Life for further information, or Chris Slattery's Expectant Mother Care if they want to volunteer as counselors. But we'd like to thank both of you for taking the time to come and do the program with us. We're very grateful and appreciative, and we admire what you're doing so very much.
Two heroes of our culture.
And we
we're
also
grateful
have
to be here.
a little donation for each of you, too.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
We'll
very
use
much.
it well.
Thanks for joining us. You've been watching the American Family Association Presents. We'll see you next week, same time and same channel.
When the pressures of the day are over and the last obligation has been met, there comes a time to celebrate the greatest gifts of all. To rediscover the joy of your children, call 1-800-A-FAMILY at Focus on the Family.
This program has been brought to you by the American Family Association of New York. For information about the Sisters of Life, phone 1-212-397-1396. For information about Expectant Mothers Care, phone 1-888-PROMOM. You may contact the AFA by writing us at P.O. Box 203, Port Washington, New York, zip 11050, or calling us at 516-944-3544. And you may also visit our website at www.afany.org, where you can read our newsletter and see our TV schedule. If you would like to receive our free quarterly newsletter, just call us or write us with your name and address. Your comments are welcome. And thank you for being with us.